Cold steel pressed against her spine as two men in tailored suits blocked the diner's exit. Nora froze, the dirty coffee cups trembling in her chapped hands. Then, a low voice murmured in her ear, barely audible over the rain hammering the windows. "You're in danger. Pretend I'm your father." Nothing in her quiet life had prepared her for him. Rain lashed against the greasy front windows of the Bellwether Diner, a neon relic tucked beneath the rattling elevated tracks in downtown Boston. Nora Kessler hated the Tuesday graveyard shift with a passion. At 22, she was juggling a mountain of nursing school debt, chronic exhaustion, and a micromanaging boss, Stan, who counted every packet of ketchup. It was just past 2 in the morning. The diner was mostly empty, save for 2 exhausted long-haul truckers at the counter and one sharply dressed older man in booth 4, who always ordered black coffee and a slice of cherry pie. The overhead fluorescents buzzed faintly, and the old jukebox in the corner had been broken for months, silent except for the occasional pop and crackle it made when the building settled. In booth 7 sat a man Nora would later learn was named Walter Bryce. Walter was a wreck, sweating despite the heavy air conditioning, his pale hands trembling as he shredded a paper napkin into confetti. He kept darting his eyes toward the glass door, wiping the condensation with a shaking sleeve, checking his watch every few seconds, like the numbers themselves might save him. "More coffee, sir?" Nora asked, stepping up with a steaming carafe, offering a tired, polite smile. Walter flinched violently, nearly knocking over his mug. No, I have to go." He scrambled out of the sticky vinyl booth, tossing a crumpled 20 onto the table. Underneath it, he slid a heavy old pocket watch, its case dented and tarnished. He grabbed Nora's wrist, his grip surprisingly tight. "Keep it safe," he muttered. "They're coming. Don't tell them you have it." Before Nora could even process the strange instruction, Walter bolted through the glass door and vanished into the pounding Boston rain, leaving his coffee still steaming on the table behind him. Nora sighed, shaking her aching head. Working late shifts in this city meant dealing with every shade of eccentric and intoxicated stranger. She slid the 20 and the heavy pocket watch into the deep front pocket of her stained apron, then turned to carry the bus tub toward the kitchen when the little bell above the door jingled hard. 2 men stepped inside, and the entire atmosphere of the diner dropped 10 degrees. They didn't look like truckers, and they didn't look like local businessmen out for a late meal. Dark wool overcoats dripped rainwater onto the checkered floor, and their shoes were too polished for a night like this. Their eyes swept the room with a chilling, predatory calm that twisted Nora's stomach into knots. The taller one, Ronan, had a jagged pale scar cutting through his left eyebrow. The broader one, Sean, locked his cold eyes on the recently vacated booth 7, then slowly shifted his gaze to Nora, who stood frozen, still holding the dirty dishes. Outside, muffled by the rain, a screech of tires and a sickening thud echoed through the night. Walter Bryce hadn't made it far. Ronan and Sean began walking toward Nora, hands buried deep in their coat pockets, shoulders rigid. Every instinct screamed at her to drop the tub and run, but her cheap rubber-soled shoes felt cemented to the floor. That was when the man from booth 4 stood up. Damian Cross was 49, with a commanding frame, slate-gray eyes, and silver threading through his dark hair. In the shadowy corners of Boston's underworld, he was known as a ruthless tactician, a man who could orchestrate a citywide blackout with a single phone call. To Nora, he was just the quiet, handsome regular, who always tipped 50% and never said more than a few words when she refilled his cup. Damian closed the distance in 3 long strides, his footsteps unhurried but certain, positioning himself between Nora and the 2 approaching men. Without warning, he threw a heavy, protective arm around her shoulders. "There you are, sweetheart." His voice carried a perfect blend of paternal warmth and mild annoyance. "I told you I'd pick you up at 2. You're working yourself to the bone for this place, and I won't have it." Nora stiffened, her breath catching. She tried to pull away, but his grip tightened, not enough to bruise, but firm enough to hold her in place. He leaned down, lips brushing her temple, as he whispered the words that would alter the rest of her life. "You're in danger. Pretend I'm your father. Nod and smile, or we both die right here." Nora swallowed hard, her heart hammering. Her mind raced, but the sincerity in his gray eyes left no room for doubt. She forced a shaky smile. "Sorry, Dad. Stan made me clean the fryers again. I lost track of time." Ronan and Sean stopped 3 feet away. Ronan tilted his head, his cold eyes dissecting the domestic scene. "Excuse me, friend," he said, his thick Irish accent slicing through the ambient noise. "We're looking for the rat who was just sitting in that corner booth. Did he give this lovely girl anything before he scurried off?" Damian turned halfway, shifting his shoulders to shield Nora completely. He flashed a polite, dismissive smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I don't know anything about a rat, pal. I'm here to pick up my daughter. Her shift's over, and we've got a long drive home. If you've got a problem with the clientele, take it up with the manager." Sean took a heavy half-step forward, his right hand drawing something dark and metallic from beneath his coat. "I think we'll just ask the girl." Damian's demeanor shifted with terrifying speed. The warm, mildly annoyed father vanished, replaced by pure, suffocating menace. "I said her shift is over. Step aside." For a tense second, the diner went silent. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to die away. Ronan's sharp eyes flicked to the tailored cut of Damian's suit, then to the subtle bulge beneath his left arm. He recognized the quiet, heavy authority of a man who didn't need to draw a gun to prove he was dangerous. He recognized a boss. "Our mistake," Ronan murmured, grabbing Sean's elbow to stop his partner's draw. "Have a good night, Dad." Damian didn't wait for them to turn around. He grabbed Nora's trembling hand. "Let's go now." Damian dragged Nora through the swinging kitchen doors, ignoring Stan's bewildered shouts, as he stood elbow-deep in dishwater, a half-scrubbed pan still in his hand. They burst through the fire exit into the suffocating chill and rain of the pitch-black alley behind the diner. "Wait, what are you doing? Let go of me," Nora gasped, stumbling over a discarded pallet as the metal door slammed shut and locked behind them with a heavy, final clang. "Keep moving and keep quiet," Damian ordered, scanning the shadows. Those were Callum Doyle's men. "They don't leave witnesses, and they don't leave loose ends. Whatever that sweating fool gave you inside, just put a price on your head." Before Nora could process the name Callum Doyle, a black Suburban roared to the mouth of the alley, headlights cutting through the rain like twin blades. The rear door flew open, pushed from inside by a broad-shouldered driver named Raphael, his face grim and unreadable in the dim light. "Get in," Damian barked, lifting Nora into the back seat before diving in beside her. "Drive, Raphael. Lower whacker. Lose them." The SUV's tires shrieked against wet asphalt as it lurched forward. Nora slammed against the door, breath coming in panicked hitches. She watched in horror as two dark figures emerged from the alley in the rearview mirror. Sparks flew as suppressed gunfire shattered the night. The reinforced rear windshield spiderwebbed as bullets embedded in the ballistic glass, inches from Nora's head. She screamed, curling into a ball, burying her face in her knees. "Keep your head down," Damian shouted, drawing a matte black pistol from his shoulder holster. Raphael navigated the underground tunnels with terrifying precision, weaving the vehicle between concrete pillars and startled taxis at 80 miles an hour, cutting across 2 lanes without slowing. The tunnel blurred into sickly fluorescent light, screaming tires, and the acrid smell of burning rubber. Every sharp turn threw Nora against Damian's solid frame, his free hand instinctively reaching out to steady her, his eyes never leaving the mirrors. For 10 grueling minutes, the chase continued, until Raphael executed a sharp, unsignaled turn up a hidden ramp. The chaos gave way to the quiet, tree-lined streets of Beacon Hill, brownstones dark and peaceful against the storm. He pulled the battered SUV into a secure underground garage. Heavy steel gates slammed shut behind them, sealing off the danger. The sudden silence was deafening. Nora was hyperventilating, tears streaking her face, her hand still gripping the leather seat like it might vanish beneath her. She pushed away from Damian, pressing her back to the cold glass. "Who are you?" she cried, voice cracking. "What is happening? People just shot at me. I'm a waitress. I have a pharmacology exam Thursday." Damian slowly holstered his weapon and took a measured breath. The adrenaline began to fade, revealing the exhausted man underneath. He looked at the terrified young woman trembling in the corner of his car and felt an unfamiliar twinge of protectiveness. "My name is Damian Cross," he said softly. "I run an organization in this city. The men who tried to kill you belong to Callum Doyle, a ruthless Irish boss who controls the illegal shipping routes through the harbor." The man in the diner, Walter, was Doyle's chief accountant. He was supposed to bring me something valuable tonight to secure his way out of the city. Instead, he panicked, realized he was being followed, and used you as a blind drop before they caught him outside your diner. Nora stared at him, her mind failing to bridge the gap between her mundane reality and the nightmare unfolding around her. You're a crime boss, the cherry pie guy. A ghost of a smile touched Damian's stern mouth. I like the pie. Reminds me of simpler times. His face sobered. Now hand it over, Nora. She froze. How do you know my name? It's on your name tag. He gestured to her apron. The item Walter gave you. I need it. Trembling, Nora reached into her damp apron pocket, bypassed the crumpled 20, and closed her cold fingers around the heavy pocket watch. She pulled it out and dropped it into Damian's outstretched palm like the metal was burning her. Damian turned the watch over in the dim dome light, expecting to see a simple engraving pointing to a locker or a drop site. Instead, his breath hitched. He pressed the small catch on the back, and the case sprang open with a soft click, revealing not a clock face, but a small brass key soldered into the lid, and beneath it, stamped faintly into the metal in letters worn thin by time. EK, 1998. Raphael, monitoring the security feed from the front seat, glanced back. Boss, we've got the location. Damian didn't answer right away. He stared at the initials, the color draining from his face. He turned his gray eyes back to Nora, studying her features with sudden, intense scrutiny. The stubborn set of her jaw, the particular shade of her hazel eyes, the familiar tilt of her nose. Nora, he said, his voice suddenly hollow, what was your mother's name? Nora recoiled, pressing herself harder against the door. What? Why does that matter? Leave my family out of this. Answer the question. His volume made both Nora and Raphael jump. He raised a placating hand, closing his eyes to wrestle back his composure. Please, I need to know. Elena, Nora whispered, her chin quivering, old grief mixing with fresh terror. Elena Kessler. She died in an accident when I was 4. Damian leaned back against the leather seat, staring blindly at the roof of the SUV. The year 1998. The initials EK, the striking resemblance he'd chalked up to coincidence while quietly eating pie in booth 4, night after night, never once letting himself ask the question that had clearly been sitting right in front of him the entire time. Walter hadn't just dropped a key to a ledger containing Doyle's financial secrets. He'd dropped a piece of a life Damian had spent 22 years trying to bury. We can't take her back to her apartment on Fenmore Street, Raphael said, checking an encrypted tablet. Boss, my scanners are picking up chatter. Doyle's people are already tearing her building apart looking for that watch. Police scanner just called it in at the diner. They found Walter in the alley 2 blocks down. She's a ghost now. What's the play? Damian looked at Nora, a girl who thought she was a struggling waitress, unknowingly about to inherit a war that had always belonged to her. Take us up to the penthouse, Damian commanded, his eyes never leaving her face. She's staying with me. Doyle wants her dead, but if he or his men so much as look in her direction, I'll burn his entire operation to the ground. Boss, with respect, why? Raphael asked, clearly startled by the deviation. Damian Cross didn't take in strays. Damian slipped the watch into his pocket, his jaw setting hard. He looked deeply into Nora's eyes, making a silent vow. Because 22 years ago, I failed to protect the only woman in this city who ever showed me real mercy, he said, voice thick with old agony. I won't fail her daughter. Damian's penthouse was a fortress of floor-to-ceiling glass, polished black marble, and cold silence. Perched on the 60th floor overlooking the dark water of the harbor. It felt less like a home and more like a high-altitude vault. No photographs on the walls, no clutter, nothing that suggested a life had ever been lived there. Nora stood near the edge of the living room, her rain-soaked sneakers ruining a Persian rug that probably cost more than her nursing degree. She hugged her arms tightly across her chest, trembling as the adrenaline crash finally hit. Damian stood at a mahogany bar, pouring 2 glasses of scotch. He handed one to Nora. His hands, steady while firing a weapon at a moving target, now shook slightly as the glass clinked against hers. Drink, he said softly. You're in shock. Nora ignored the whiskey, staring at the open pocket watch resting on the coffee table. EK 1998. Explain, she demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. My mother was a pediatric nurse at Cambridge General. She lived in a small apartment in Somerville, clipped coupons, and died when a drunk driver ran a red light on Mass Ave. She had nothing to do with any of this. She had nothing to do with you. Damian took a slow swallow of scotch. The hardened boss suddenly looked incredibly old, weighed down by decades of accumulated sins. She was a nurse, he agreed, voice thick with nostalgia. But before Cambridge General, she did a stint at a private, off-the-books clinic near the harbor, a place men like me went when we couldn't risk a public emergency room and a police report. In the winter of 1997, a rival crew put 2 bullets in my chest. Elena was the one who pulled them out, alone, at 3 in the morning, with her hands shaking the whole time. She didn't judge me. She didn't fear me. She just fixed me. Nora's breath hitched. She stepped back, the horrific realization sinking into her bones. I fell in love with her, Damian continued, gray eyes pleading for understanding. It was reckless, a liability in my world. We kept it hidden for a year, sneaking around like teenagers, meeting in places no one from either of our lives would ever think to look. But this city has no secrets. My own people found out. They ordered a hit on her to make sure I stayed focused, to make sure I had no weaknesses. He looked away, jaw clenching. I warned her. I gave her a new name, Cash, and told her to run. I told her I'd find her when it was over. A year later, my people told me Elena Kessler died in a car accident. They told me there were no survivors. She had me, Nora whispered, the glass slipping from her fingers, shattering against the marble. Neither of them flinched. I was in the back seat. The paramedics pulled me out. The state put me in foster care because there was no father listed on my birth certificate. The silence in the penthouse was absolute, broken only by wind against the glass. In the diner, Nora said, the memory hitting her like a blow. When you grabbed me, you whispered, "Pretend I'm your father." I didn't know, Damian said, voice breaking. The ruthless boss sank to his knees among the shattered crystal, ignoring the glass biting his trousers. He looked up, tears finally spilling. I swear to you, if I had known you were alive, if I had known you were out there struggling, I would have burned this entire city down to find you. Nora backed away, hands covering her mouth to muffle a broken sob. The man who had just saved her life, the boss who ordered executions with a flick of his wrist, was the phantom father she'd spent her childhood grieving for. Before the weight of it could fully settle, the heavy doors burst open. Raphael sprinted in, tactical vest fastened, rifle in hand, boots skidding slightly on the marble. His eyes darted to the emotional scene, before snapping back to Damian, with practiced discipline. Boss, we've got a problem. He crossed the room in a few quick strides. That key inside the watch isn't for a locker. It's for the Ashcombe Private Depository. Walter used Elena's old dormant alias, an account he legally managed decades ago, to hide Doyle's master ledger. He knew Doyle's men would never look for it under the name of a dead woman tied to the Cross family. Damian slowly stood up. The vulnerable, grieving father instantly evaporated, replaced by the terrifying, cold-blooded kingpin he had spent 2 decades becoming. He brushed the glass from his bleeding knees without a flicker of pain crossing his face. Doyle knows? His hackers breached the depository's registry an hour ago, Raphael confirmed grimly. He's mobilizing a crew to State Street right now. A big one, from what our people are hearing. If he gets that ledger back, he secures his shipping routes, and he'll use the money to launch a full-scale war against us. Worse, he knows the account is tied to Nora. She'll never be safe. Not in this city, not anywhere he can reach. Damian turned to Nora, his gray eyes burning with lethal protective fire. He cupped her tear-streaked cheek, thumb brushing away a stray tear. For 22 years I couldn't protect your mother, he whispered, voice vibrating with resolve. Tonight, I end Callum Doyle, and I bring you what belongs to us. The underground garage of the Ashcombe Private Depository was a concrete tomb, echoing with the screech of tires. Damian hadn't left Nora at the penthouse. He refused to let her out of his sight, placing her in an armored transport flanked by 6 of his most trusted enforcers, men who moved through the dark garage without a single wasted word. Stay low, Damian ordered, handing her a Kevlar vest that felt impossibly heavy against her chest. Raphael, secure the perimeter. We go in, get the ledger, and leave. Anyone who stands in the way doesn't breathe another breath. They moved as a phantom unit, breaching the depository's steel service doors. But Doyle's men had arrived 3 minutes earlier. The moment Damian's team stepped into the marble-floored vault lobby, the space erupted into gunfire. Nora screamed, hitting the cold floor as bullets shattered the chandeliers overhead. raining crystal down on them like broken ice. The roar of gunfire was paralyzing. She covered her ears, squeezing her eyes shut as the bitter smell of cordite filled her lungs, the marble beneath her cheek vibrating with every impact. Damian was a force of nature. He didn't cower. He moved with brutal, practiced efficiency, his pistol spitting fire, neutralizing two of Doyle's gunners before they realized they were flanked. Covering fire, Raphael roared, laying down a barrage that pinned the remaining Irishmen behind an overturned reception desk, chips of marble flying with every impact. Through the chaos, Ronan, the scarred man from the diner, emerged from behind a marble pillar, aiming a shotgun at the corner where Nora huddled, his boots crunching over broken crystal. "End of the line, little waitress," he sneered, finger tightening on the trigger, a cruel grin spreading across his face. A single shot rang out. Ronan froze mid-motion, eyes rolling back, and collapsed in a heap, revealing Damian standing 20 feet away, pistol smoking, eyes devoid of mercy. "No one threatens my daughter," Damian hissed, already turning to scan for the next threat. With the remaining opposition eliminated or fleeing, an eerie silence fell over the ruined lobby, broken chandeliers still swaying faintly overhead. Damian pulled Nora to her feet, shielding her as they approached the massive steel vault door. Raphael blew the electronic lock with a shaped charge, and the door swung open on silent hinges, revealing rows of polished brass safety deposit boxes stretching back into the dark. Rows of polished brass safety deposit boxes stretched back into the dark, hundreds of them, each one hiding some stranger's carefully guarded secret. Damian marched to box 1998. With a trembling hand, he inserted the small brass key from inside the watch. The lock clicked. He pulled the long drawer free and set it on the velvet viewing table. Inside lay a thick leather-bound ledger, undeniable proof of Doyle's illegal empire, enough to dismantle the operation overnight. But beneath the ledger sat something else, a small sealed envelope, yellowed with age, addressed simply to Damian. His breath hitched. He opened it carefully, his fingers trembling slightly as they unfolded the brittle paper, pulling out a single sheet of hospital stationery. The ink faded, but still legible after all these years. "Damian, if you are reading this, it means the worst has happened, and you finally found our vault. I never stopped loving you. Please take care of our little girl. Her name is Nora. She has your stubborn jaw and my heart. Tell her I love her. Keep her safe in the dark. Forever yours, Elena." Damian pressed the letter to his lips, closing his eyes as a single tear fell onto the aged paper, blurring one corner of Elena's careful handwriting. He reached back into the box and pulled out a delicate silver chain with a small pendant, a piece of jewelry he'd given Elena on their 6-month anniversary, one he'd assumed had been lost forever, along with everything else. He turned to Nora, who stared at the letter with wide, tear-filled eyes. Without a word, he stepped behind her and fastened the cold chain around her neck. It settled perfectly against her collarbone, as if it had always belonged there. "The ledger goes to the federal prosecutor tonight," Damian declared, turning to Raphael, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority once more. "Doyle will be in a federal penitentiary before sunrise, or dead by my hand. The war is over. Get our people out of here, and get this place cleaned up." He turned back to Nora, offering his hand. He wasn't just a terrifying boss anymore, and he wasn't a stranger, eating cherry pie in a lonely diner. He was a father who had fought through hell and blood to get his blood back. "Are you ready to go home, Nora?" he asked softly. Nora looked down at the blood staining her cheap apron, then at the beautiful silver chain resting against her chest, still warm from Damian's hands. Her old life had died in that diner at 2:15 a.m., and something new, terrifying and fragile had taken its place. She took a deep breath, reaching out and placing her hand firmly in her father's. "Yes, Dad," Nora whispered. "Take me home." Did this mafia twist leave you breathless? If you loved the drama, hidden secrets, and heart-pounding action of Nora and Damian's story, don't leave just yet. Hit like, share with your fellow romance suspense fans, and subscribe for more thrilling stories. What would you have done in Nora's shoes? Let us know in the comments.